Welcome everyone. As we learn Chok Yisrael for Parshas Tetzaveh, Yom Shlishi, Day 3, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. V'lakachta eshtei avnei shoyam, you should take the two onyx stones, ufitachta aleihem, and engrave upon them Shmois B'nei Yisrael, the names of the B'nei Yisrael, v'sitzav yastartein avnei vurla, v'sigloif aleihem Shmoas B'nei Yisrael, says Rashi, the next pasuk, Shisha mishmoisam aleven achad, 6 of the names of the 6 tribes on one of the onyx stones, v'shmois hashisha hanesarim, and the other 6 left over, alo even hashenish, on the other stone, and it should be in the order kisoldoisam that they were born. Shita mishma hasain al avna chodav yashmas shita dishta'aru al avna sivneisa kisul dasain, says Rashi kisoldoisam kiseder shenoldu, in the order that they were born. Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan v'naftali al achas, that's the order that they were born. V'alashniya, and on the other stone, God, Asher, Yisachar, Zvulun, Yosef, Uvinyamin, and Binyamin is spelled mole, full, with 2 yuds, Beis Nun, Yud Mem Yud Nun. Shekenu Kasa b'Makom Toladatoi, that's the way it's written where he was born, and that comes out to be 25 letters on each stone. Esim v'chamish oisiyos b'kol achas v'achas, 25 letters on each stone. Says the pasuk, Maisei Chorash Even, the work of a stone artisan, a stone craftsman. Pituchei Chaisim, like the engraving on a signet ring. Tifatach, you should engrave Eshtei Havonim, the 2 names, Al Shmais, and Rashi says that even though it says Al, it means Bishmais, with the names of Bnei Yisrael. Musabos, and these 2 onyx stones are surrounded mishpasai zahav with 2 golden sockets. The golden sockets were like a pit, that a setting that the stones were set into. Ta'asa oisam, you should make them. Oivad uman avan tova ksav mefaresh kiglaf de iska tiglof yastartein Avnaya al Shmas B'nei Yisrael Mishakon Meramtzon de Dahav Tavei Yasain. Says Rashi, Maisei Chorash Even. Chorash Even is Maisei Umin Shel Avonim, the work of a stone craftsman. Now Rashi says, it says Chorash with a patach. Sometimes it says with a kametz, Chorash. So Rashi says Chorash Zeh it's connected to the word afterwards because it's a chorash even, a craftsman of stone. That's why chorash is with the vowelization of a patach. Chorash eitzim notokov, in Yeshaya when it says the wood craftsman made a straight line, it says chorash with a patach because it's a chorash shel eitzim, a craftsman of wood. V'chein chorash barzel matzad, and also a craftsman of iron, for an iron forged an axe. Kol eila devukin, these are all attached to the world next to it, and therefore upesuchim, they have a patach. Pituchei chaisim, like the engraving of a signet ring, kitargumai, ksav meforesh, clear lettering, kigloif de iska, like the lettering on a signet ring. Charuztai sa'oisiyos b'seichon, the letters are engraved in it, kamoishe chotzen chaimsei tabois, like they make the letters in a signet ring, shehem l'chaisim igarais, which are for the seal of letters, ksav niker umefurish, writing that's recognizable and clear. Al shmois b'nei Yisrael. Now literally this would be translated on the names, but it means kamay bishmais, with the names of the b'nei Yisrael, musabois mishbetzais, surrounded by a setting, Mukafos ha'avonim, the onyx stones are surrounded b'mishpatzei zahav, with a setting of gold. Sha'isam moishava evan, we make a setting for this onyx stone, bizav, out of gold, kamin guma, like a pit, lamidas evan, for the measurement of the stone, or mishaka b'mishpatzei, and you sink it into the setting. Nimtza hamishpatzei seveves esavan, the setting surrounds the stone, saviv, all around. Or mechaber hamishpatzei bekisvei ha'ephod, and the setting is attached to the shoulder straps of the ephod, of the apron. V'samta eshtei ha'avonim, and you'll place these two stones al kisvei ha'ephod, on the shoulder straps of the ephod, of the apron. Avnei zikaron l'bnei Yisrael, they are stones of remembrance of the Bnei Yisrael. Rashi explains that it's a zikaron. Hashem looks at the names and remembers the good deeds of the Shvatim. V'nasa Aaron as shmoisam, and Aaron carries the names l'fnei Hashem as he serves Hashem. Al shtei kseifov, on his two shoulder straps, l'zikaron, for a memory. Usashava yastarten avnai al kisvei ephod avnei dochrona l'vnei Yisrael v'yital Aaron yashmoas on kodam adinai al train kispoi l'dochrona, says Rashi, l'zikaron. She'ei roya HaKadosh Baruch Hu hashvatim ksuvim lefanav, Hashem will see the names of the shvatim, v'yizkar tzidkasim, and he will remember their righteousness, for his schus, for Klal Yisrael. V'asisa mishpatzei zav, this refers to two other sockets of gold, and mishpatzei is plural, miat mishpatzei shtayim, it's another two. V'loi pirish lach ata b'parasha zu, it doesn't explain in this parasha, ela miktzas sarchan, just part of their purpose, of a parasha chayishin, and we get to the parasha of the chayishin, goyim lach pirushan, we will explain what these other two sockets were for. And now we continue, Yecheskel, if you remember, Yecheskel was talking about the building of the third temple and how they would bring a bull as a chattas. They will slaughter this bull, v'lakachta midama, you will take from its blood, v'nasata al arba karnoisav, and you'll put it on since it's a chattas, you will apply the blood on the three horns at the corners of the top of the mizbeach, vel arba Pinois Azara, and the four corners of the Azara, that's the top of the Mizbeach, Velagvul Saviv, and you'll also put the Shirayim on the border, the side at the bottom of the Mizbeach, roundabout, the Chitisa Isai, and in that way you will purify the Mizbeach, the Chiparto, and you will cleanse it from its status of being just chulin, mundane, but rather initiate to its holiness as the Mizbeach. The lakachta es haparachatas, then you will take the bull after you apply the blood, usrafai, and you will burn it b'mifkad habayis, in a pointed spot on the Temple Mount, michutz l'mikdash, outside of the mikdash. Uvayom hasheni, on the second day of the Chanukas habayis, of the inauguration, takriv seir izim tomim l'chatas, you'll offer a he-goat, unblemished, as a sin offering, v'chitoi es ha-mizbeach, and you will apply it to the mizbeach, kasher chitoi bapar, as you applied the blood of the bull. B'chaloischoi mechate, after you finish applying the blood of the goat, takriv par ben bakar tomim, you will offer up a bull of cattle, unblemished, va'ayil min hatzayin tamim, and a ram from the sheep, which will be unblemished, and it will be for a burnt offering. V'kraftem l'fnei Hashem, you will offer it before Hashem, v'shlichu ha'kahanim alei melech, and the kahanim will douse it with salt, al kol karban chatakriv melech, v'helo ha'isam, and these two animals will be offered up, oila l'Hashem, a burnt offering for Hashem. And now we look at the wise advice of Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei. Mayim amukim divrei pi ish. Deep waters are the words of a chashuv, a man. When it says ish is a term of importance. like it says about Mordechai, Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan Abira, or it says about Noach Ish Tzadik. So deep waters are the words of a important man. Here we're going to see that Shlomo HaMelech contrasts the words of a knowledgeable person and the words of a fool. Nachal Noiveya, his words are like a bubbling fountain. Mikar Chachma, they're a source of constant wisdom. Se'es Pnei Rasha Lo Tov. It's not good if Hashem chooses to favor the wicked in this world, because then he's taking away any of his merits and then he destroys him totally in the next world. Nor is it good Lahatois Tzadik B'Mishpat, to tilt the righteous person in favor in this world. Rather, Hashem gives him some punishment in this world in order to make him free from any punishment in the next world. Sifsei Ksil, the lips of a fool, Yavoyu V'riv. All that he says with a contentiousness, with a contentious spirit. He's always on the attack. Ufiv lama'alumois yikra. And the result of his approach, of the way that he talks, brings him smitings. It causes people to hit him. It causes people to fight with him. Piksil, the mouth of the fool, mechitaloi, is a destruction for him. It causes him shever. It causes him destruction. Usvasov, not only in this world, but his lips are mokesh nafshay. They're a trap for his soul. The words gets a person into trouble. It gets a person into trouble. Lashon hara causes a person in Yerushalmi Peah. It says that the three worst sins are avodah zarah, gilui arayos, and shvichas damim, idolatry, immorality, and bloodshed. But lashon hara keneged kulam. Lashon hara is equal to all of them. Divrei nirgan, the words of the slanderer, kimislahamim. The words of the slanderer are like physical assaults on the person that he talks about. V'heim yordu chadrei voten, and these hurtful words descend to the very inner being, to the belly, to the very innards of the one that he talks about. The hurt and the crime of words, unlike in our society where we say sticks and stones can break bones, but names can never hurt me, can never hurt anyone. That's not true at all. In the Torah's in the Torah's philosophy, Oinas Dvarim, hurtful words are worse than Oinas Mammon, are worse than stealing from someone. And Amal b'mnei chaver rabim ein lo chelek lo'olam haba. We now move on to the Mishnah segment, and here we have a very long parak in the fourth parak of Ksuvas. Fortunately, those that learn the Mishnah Yomis persuasion have recently learned this, at least on this cycle. Narish and Ispatisa, a maiden of 12 years old and 1 day, till 12 and a half years old and 1 day, Bashta, her humiliation, Ispatisa, that was seduced by a man, Bashta, her humiliation, Ufgama, her being devalued, that her virginity was taken away, Uknasa, and the knas of 50 shkalim, Shalavia, goes to the father. Vatsar, and we add to that her pain, Batfusa, in the case of rape, because when he rapes her, he causes her pain. The bedin actually makes of, if the verdict was issued before the father died, then Harihain Shalab, the money goes to the father. Mesav, and if the father died, since it was already issued to the father, then it goes to the Yisayim, it goes to the Yoshim, Harihain Shalachim. It goes to our brothers, in other words, the Yoshim, the sons that inherit the father. Lo Yispeak Lamad Bedin, if they didn't get a chance to issue the verdict at Shemesa of, until the father dies, then Harihain Shel Atzma. Then when they issue the verdict, since it never came into the possession of the father, the money goes to the girl herself. De Bedin Acheloi Bagra, if they issued the verdict before she became a Bogeris, that's 12 and a half and 1 day, Hari Hein Shalav. The money is awarded to the father. Mesa of, if the father dies, Hari Hein Shalach. It goes to the brothers. Lo Yispeaker Lamad Bedin, if they didn't get a chance to issue the verdict at Shebagra until she became 12 and a half in one day, Hari Hein Shalatzma, she's out of the rishus of the father, and it goes to her. Reb Shimon says a chiddush over the Tanakama. Im lo Yispeaker Ligbais at Shemesav, even if they issued the verdict before the father died, but if it wasn't collected until the father died, then it goes to her and not to the Yoshim, Hari Hein Shel Atzma. However, Mais Yodeha, her salary, Umitziasa, and her lost articles, as long as she's a Nara, Afal Pi Shaloi Gavsa, even if it wasn't collected before the father died, still it goes to the Yoshim, Mesa of, if the father dies, Hari Hein Shalach, and it goes to her brother, the Yoshim of the father. Hamare says, Bita, if somebody accepted engagement for his daughter, Vigersha, and she got divorced. Ersa, he again accepted her hand in engagement, Vinis Armula, she got widowed. Since she never got married, she never left the father, so both ksuvas go to the father. Ksuvasa Shalai. His Sia Vigersha, but if he married her off and she got divorced, his Sia Vinis Armula, she married her off and she got widowed. In this case, she went out of the father when she was married, so both ksuvas go to her. Ksuvasa Shalah. Reb Yehuda says the first ksuva, which was pledged while she was in the rishus of the father, it goes to her. In other words, if she got married, divorced, then got married and widowed, Reb Yehuda says the first ksuva, since it was made when she was in the rishus of the father, Reb Yehuda Arishayna Shel Av, the first ksuva goes to the father. Amrulai, they told him, the Chacham told him, once she gets married, once her marriage is consummated, she's out of the rishus of the father. Mishisiya ein lavia rishusba, and therefore both ksuvas, even the first one, go to her. Now we know that in the event that a nara hamurasa, a betrothed maiden, commits adultery, we stone her by the Pesach of her father's home. Of course, that's where there's two witnesses and there's Hasra. What about if she doesn't have a father? Hagiyorishin is Gai Rabita Ima. Her mother converted, and the girl, who is not of age, so that she still has din of a basula, she converted at the age of 2, and that means she didn't convert, she doesn't have the das to convert it, she converted with the mother. So this girl doesn't have a halachic father. And then, if at the age of 12, when she's engaged, she commits adultery, vizinsa, harizu b'chenek. Since she doesn't have a father and a father's house, she gets the normal penalty of adultery, which is strangulation. Ein lo loy pesach beisav. It doesn't have to be by the father's house. V'loy meya sela. If she's maligned, in the case of Moitzi Shemra, she's not entitled to 100 sela. Hoysoi rasa shaloi b'kedusha. If she was conceived before her father became a convert. V'leidasa b'kedusha. But when she was born, both her mother and she and the father converted. Still, she doesn't have a halachic father because she was conceived before her father converted. Again, there won't be a Pesach Pesavia, but this case, we learn out, since her Leda was B'kedusha, she was born when her mother already was Megayer, she gets skila. Harizuba skila, but ein lo loy Pesach Pesav. She doesn't have a father's house. V'loy me'asel, there's no penalty of 100 shkalim if she was maligned. If the father was already yid when she was conceived, then Hari Kabas Yisrael called over. She's a regular Yisrael. Yesh la'av. What about if she has a father? Ve'ein lo Pesach Pesav, but the father doesn't have a house. Yesh lo Pesach Pesav. Father has a house, but ve'ein la'av, the father is not alive. Hari Zubaskila. She commits adultery while she's a Na'amarasa. She does get stoned. Lo inema Pesach Pesav. It only says by the father's house. El mitzvah if it's possible. Ha'ov zakai bebitay b'kedusheha. A father while his daughter is a minor, or while she's a nara until she's 12 and a half one day, he is allowed to marry her off, bekesef, by accepting money, b'shtar, by accepting a shtar, or by licensing her to have intimacy. V'zakai b'mitziasu b'maisi yodeh, he gets her fines and her salary. U'ba'afaras nadareh, he annuls her vows. U'mekabeles gita, if the husband wants to divorce her, he can accept the get on her behalf. However, if she inherits property from her maternal side, he doesn't get the right of the usufruct of her property. Nieces, if she gets married, her husband gets the right of usufruct. Yes, or if she inherits something, he gets the usufruct of her property. He has to support her. If she gets captured, he has to ransom her. He has to bury her. Now, talking about burying her, Rabbi Yehuda Eimer, afilu ani shebi Yisrael, even a poor man, lo yivcha, should not provide less, mishnei chalilim, from two flutists to do the mournful dirge, or mekanenes, and a professional woman to lament, to raise the tears. The girl is always in the ownership of the father, until the husband consummates the marriage. If the father gave her over to the agents of the husband, so she's already in the ownership of the husband, meaning that he gets the rights over her. But if the father went along with the agents of the husband, or the agents of the father went along with the agents of the husband, she still remains in the father's domain. But if the messengers of the father gave her over to the messengers of the husband, if once his daughter becomes 6, halachically, a father doesn't have to support his daughter anymore. Of course, Bezdin tries to shame him to do so, but once the girl turns 6, he's not mechuyev to support her. Zeh medrash darish Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah lefnei chachamim. So did Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah expound before the sages, but Keren B'Yavna, in the yeshiva known as Keren B'Yavna, because they sat in rows like a vineyard. Habonim Yirshu, sons inherit, Vabonis Yizainu, and daughters get supported. And we learn out a equation. Ma abonim ein Yarshim, just like the sons only inherit after death. El lachamisas of afabonis, daughters also ein nizanis, they don't have to be supported. El lachamisas avim, until after the father's dead, when they're supported by the estate. Now, we know that the Tnoi Ksuva, the conditions of the Ksuva, even if they're not written down, are still applicable. Even though they're not written down, they still apply. Loi Kosav La Ksuva, if the husband didn't write her a Ksuva, still Basula gave a Masayim, a virgin collects 200, Val Mana Mana, a widow collects 100, Mipnei Shu T'nai Bezdin. That's an automatic condition of Bezdin. If he writes to her, he's a chevraman, he writes to her as her ksuva, she's a virgin, he writes to her a piece of property which is only worth 100. He doesn't write to her, all my property are responsible for your ksuva. They're still responsible. It's a condition of Bezdin that all his property is responsible for the ksuva. Loi Kosova, if he doesn't write to her, im tishtavoy, if you're taken as a captive, efrekinach, I will redeem you, vaisvinach lilintoy, and take you back to me as a wife. Uba kehenes, if a kehenes, he can't take her back as a wife, because he's also to her, even if she was molested, even if she was raped. And to a kehenes, the normal writing would be, adrinach lemedintech, I'll return you back to your country. Even if he doesn't write this, chayiv, shoot T'nai Bezdin, it's a condition that you have to ransom your wife. Nishbeis, if she's taken into captivity, chayiv lifdois, he has to ransom her. Now here, they're asking $1 million for the ransom. So, the Amar, if he says, harigito ksuva, so here's your get, and your ksuva, here's the 200 zuz, I'm not paying $1 million. tiptes atzma, ransom yourself, ain't a rashai. He's not allowed to. Rather, he has to ransom her. Loksa, but if she gets sick, chayiv l'rfoisa, he has to pay for her medical bills. Omar, if he can handle it, and he says, Harigito uksubasa, here's your get and your ksuba, take care of yourself, terape es atzma, rashai, that he's allowed to do. Now there's a special t'nai in the ksuva that if a man had two wives, Sarah and Yocheved, and to Sarah he had a very big ksuva of $1,000, and to Yocheved he only had a ksuva of 200, and both wives predecease him, and then he dies, before his sons from both wives divided equally, Sarah's sons are allowed to take the $1,000, and Yocheved's sons are take the 200, and that's the ksuvas benin dichrin, allowing the male sons to get their ksuva first. Now, loy kosovla, if you didn't write this clause, loy kosovla benin dichrin de haven lechiminoi, the male children that you have in on use in ksav ksuvasech, they get your kesef ksav ksuvasech, they get the money of your ksuva yoser al chelkein dam achayin, more than the portion that they divide equally with their brothers. Chayiv, he still has to honor the ksuva of each one. Shoot tanai bezdin, it's a condition of bezdin. B'non nukvin de haven lechiminoi, your daughters, Yavin Yosvin Bebesi, they should live in my house, Umetaznin Minichse, and be supported from my estate, Adi Yisnasvin Leguvrin, until they get married. If he doesn't write that clause, Chayiv, he has to honor it. Shutanai Bezdin. And finally, the 12th Mishnah, I told you it's a lot of Mishnayos, Ate Yosva Besi, you should live in my house. He says to his wife, you should live in my house. If he leaves this clause out, you should live in my house, and be supported for my property. Kol yemei migad al menusich, as long as you are living as a widow, the basi, you could lodge in my home. Chayiv, even if he didn't write it, he has to. The orphans have to give her the home, and she lives in the home, and she's supported. Tanai bezdin, it's a condition of bezdin. Now, kacho yanchi Yerushalayim kaisman, that was the way the people of Yerushalayim wrote. Anshe Gal, the people of Galil, Hayu kaisman kanchi Yerushalayim. Anshe Yehuda, Anshe Yehuda gave an option. You should live with us and be supported until we grant you the ksuva. Anshe Yudzu Ayorshin Litain leksuvase, until they want to give you the ksuva. And therefore, in Yehuda, Lefikach Imratzu Ayoshim, if the Yoshim want Noisnu Ksuvasa, they could give her a ksuva and then Paitu Naisa, and then she has to move out of the house. And now we learn from the Gemara in Ksuvas on Daf Nun, famous Gemara. I made a bracha already. Amar Rabbi Yelah, Ba'usha Hiskinu, in Usha, this was one of the 10 stops that the Sanhedrin took after they were exiled from the Lishkus Hagazes, the chamber of cut stone where the Sanhedrin originally sat. Ba'usha Iskinu, in Usha they enacted Hamavazve, if a person wants to give a lot of tzedakah, perfect for Pashas Truma, Al Yavazve Yosim Echamish, he shouldn't give more than a fifth of his property. Tanya Namihoki, Hamavazve, if you're giving a lot of, if you're generous, Al Yavazve Yosim Echamish, don't give more than a fifth. Why? Shema Yitztach Lebrius, maybe you'll have a downturn and you'll need to beg. There was an incident with one, he wanted to give more than a fifth, and his friend didn't let him. And who was this person that wanted to give more than a fifth? Who was that chaver that didn't want to let him give more than a fifth? Rabbi Yeshaviv. V'emrila Rabbi Yeshaviv. Rabbi Yeshaviv wanted to give more than a fifth. And his friend didn't let him. Umanu, and who was that? Rabbi Akiva. Where do we find in the pasuk a source that you could give up to a fifth? We find it by Yaakov, because it says by Yaakov, "V'kol asher titein li," whatever you give me, aser asrenu lach. Since aser is a tenth, and it says Aser Asrenu, that's 2/10, and we all know that 2/10 is a fifth. Says but it says Aser Asrenu, tenth of a tenth, and a tenth of a tenth is less than a fifth, because once you take a tenth, the second tenth is less. It's only 0.9. V'olaydami Yisura Ba'aser, the later tenth is not similar to Yisura Kama, to the earlier tenth. Ravashi Asrenu, it says, I will take a tenth of it, of the original amount. Labasra Kikama, the second tenth is as the first tenth, which then would equal a fifth. Rav Yitzchak B'Usha Iskinu, they enacted in Usha, Shia Adam Iskalgal and B'nai Achtem Esrei Shana. A person should go easy with his son until he's 12, Mikan Ve'elach, but once he's 12, Yoyri Ma'lechayev, he should go to his very life, meaning he should lirdoisei b'ritzua, he should use the strap, Rashi says, u'b'chayser lechem, and deprive him even of food in order to make sure that he learns. So the Gemara says, "Ini, is that so?" V'amalei Rav l'Rav Shmuel bar Shilas. Rav said to Rav Shmuel bar Shilas. Rav Shmuel bar Shilas was a very, very big Rebbe. I always said that the name Shilas is interesting, and I want to say it's an abbreviation of Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Summit. That's Shilas. Well, we learned Batzim Bar Shis, less than 6, Loit Kabel, don't accept him. Bar Shis, but once he's 6, Kabel, accept the child, Usvei Ketura, and stuff him like an axe. So you see, even at 6, so the Gemara says, yes, Svei Ketura, in other words, teach him a lot. You don't use the strap, you don't deprive food, until after 12. It depends for what. Hala Mikra, even at a younger age, for Chumash. Hala Mishnah, not until he's 12. My foster mother told me, Bashis Lamikra, once he's 6, and I was starting the 5th year, Chumash. Bar Eser, in the 10th year already, the Mishnah, Bar Tleiser, once he's 13, L'Tanesim Eisleis, then he could fast the whole Yom Kippur. He's already Bar Mitzvah with Tinoikis, and by a girl, Bas Treisa, when she's 12, Bas Mitzvah. Amrav Katina, Kala Machnis es B'nai Pochus Mi Ben Sheish. Whoever puts his child into learning less than 6, Rutz Acharav, you'll run after him trying to cure him, ve'ena magia. You won't be able to cure him. He'll be weak. Ikidamre, chaveirav ratzon achrav, his friends will try to catch up to his learning, ve'en magina, so they won't be able to overtake him since he got an early start. V'travayu isnu, says, well, they're both true. Chalish, he'll be weak, but ugamir, he'll be learned. Iba yasema, no. Hadikakish, if he's a weak child, then don't teach him, because you'll never be able to undo the harm to his constitution. Hadabari, if he's a strong, healthy child, then if you start early, nobody will be able to overtake his advanced learning. Ashrei shoimrei mishpat, fortunate are those that keep the law. Oiset tzedakah l'chol eis, they do righteousness, charity all the time. So the Gemara says, "V'chi efshel aset tzedakah b'chol eis." Can you do charity at all time? Dosha Rabbi Seinu Shaviyavni, yes. V'imrila Rabbi Lazar Hazan Bonav B'naisav Kishen Ketanim. This is a person, we said that you don't have to do it once they reach the age of 6, but one who takes care of their children, the boys and the girls, when they're young, that's giving them charity. You're giving them room and board, you're giving them a bed to sleep. You're doing charity all the time, 24/7. This is somebody who raises an orphan boy, an orphan girl in his house, and marries them off. So therefore, he's doing for them kindness at all times. Substance and wealth in his house, and his righteousness remains forever. What righteousness reigns forever? Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda, it's machlokes Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda. Echad Amar, Zeh loymei Torah malamda. This is a person that learns Torah and teaches it. Because when you teach a person, you give them olam haba forever. So tzidkasa emedes la'ad. Echad Amar Zeh HaKosev Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim. This is somebody that writes svarim, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, Umashilon la'acherim, lends them out so people are able to learn. If they're able to learn, so that gives them merit forever. Urei vanim levanecha, you will see sons to your sons, Shalom al Yisrael. And that will be a sign that there's peace in Klal Yisrael. What does that mean? Amri Yeshua ben Levi, Kevin Shabanim levanecha, if your sons have sons, Shalom al Yisrael. You know why? Because if your son has a son, there's not gonna be a need for chalitza or yibam. Now, yibam is a hard thing, because if he has to marry, if she has to marry another man without making a shidduch, without choosing, it could lead to fighting. But if they have sons, so there's no need for yibam. So, vanu levanecha, shalom al Yisrael. Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amakeven shebanim levanecha. If your sons have sons, then the Yerusha is clear, because everybody knows that a son is Yerush. If there's no children, and then this one fights, and this one fights, Shalom al Daina Yisrael, this peace for the judges of Israel, they're not going to come to fight about the Yerusha. Now the next Zoyar, Rabbi say, is so important. Normally we learn a Zoyar, and it's esoteric, and people are not sure what they're going to take away from this. But this Zoyar is so vital. This Zoyar tells us, I want to tell it to you outside a little bit. This Zoyar tells us that if a person loses himself in anger, if a person loses his control, he loses his top, and goes into a tantrum, his neshama says, I'm out of here. And when the neshama leaves, he would die. Except Hashem doesn't kill him. But what's replaced is the sitra achra. It's replaced with something very tameh. And therefore, when somebody gets angry, you're not allowed to look at him, because he has been replaced with what's called El Zar. He has a din like idolatry. You're not allowed to look at an idol. You're not allowed to attach yourself to an idol. So let's see the Zohar inside. Rabbi Yehuda starts, Chidlu lachem min Adam. You should refrain from attaching yourself to a person, Asher neshama ba'apay, whose soul was replaced because of his anger. Ki bameh nachshavu. Now, literally, this means, what is he worth? But ki bameh, he's like a high place. Nachshavu, he's like an idol. Hacha pakid kuchabarichu levarnash. Here the Zohar says Hashem is commanding a person, va'azirle, and warning him leistamra, to hide, to watch out, me'unam b'nei nasha, from people, the astu or chayu, that have turned their way, may orach tov, from a good path, lo'irach bish, un misave nafshayu, and their souls have been polluted, bahu misava achra, with a koyach from the sitra achra. When Hashem created man, he made him in his image, and he blew into him a Holy Spirit, the kol b'tlus, that has three parts. Kamadik kimna, as we've established, this, but nefesh, ruach, and neshama. There's the lowest level, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. The ila mikula, the highest level, is the neshama. The kela ilah, it is the kayach from above, leminda, to know, ulamitar, and to keep, pikudai de kutshaberichu, the laws of Hashem. The iahi nishmas kadisha, al la bepilchana achara, if this holy soul that a person has, if this holy neshama has been replaced with a koyach of the sitra achra, hay iyu masivla, that causes the person to become fouled and If that happens, v'nafik b'pilchane demare, and he leaves the service of his Creator, begin the tlas chelin ilan, these three powers, the ruach, the nefesh, and the neshama, kulu chad, operate in a unified way. Nefesh, ruach, and neshama, mishtadte kechada, unite as one, v'avechad. V'chola, they operate kigavna derazi ilah, like the secrets of that which is elevated. This refers to the Zer Anpin, that even though each one is separate, Chesed is separate, Gvura is separate, Tiferes is separate, they all act together as one. V'i chazina l'hai barnash. Now, how do you know who to attach yourself to? V'i chazina l'hai barnash tahavo be'ilan dargan kulu. If you see a person that has these ruach, nefesh, and neshama, ad leikaima b'kiyume, until you don't have a knowledge, leminda man ihu, to know what makes him tick, to know if he's good or not. B'mayis yada lekarva barnosha ba'adei, how do you know to attach yourself to this person? Oy le'ismeno aminei, or to refrain from being with him. Berug zei mamish, when you see him in an angry situation, yudole barnosh, you could recognize the person, v'ishtamoda man ihu, and know who he is. This is what it says, that you could test the person, b'kisai, b'kaisai, b'kasai, by the way he acts with his money, by the way he acts when he drinks, and by the way he acts when he gets angry. Iahi nishmasa kaddish nitar b'shata derugzei asayalei. If he protects and guards his holy neshama when anger comes, v'lo yakar lo me'asra, and he doesn't uproot it with a terrible tantrum, begin lemishrei tchosehu elzar, to replace it by the elzar. You see a person that knows how to control himself. He might get a little upset, a little perturbed, but he doesn't lose it. He doesn't fly into a rage. Doyu barnosh kidikayos. That's a proper person. Doyu avdo demari. That's a servant of the Creator. Doyu gvar shlim. That's a whole person. But v'yahu barnosh loynatula. He doesn't have any control. V'yu oker kedusha doyu lo me'asri. And he uproots his holy neshama. Lemishrei ba'asra, to replace in its stead sitra achara, kayach from the other side. Vaday do'yu barnosh demorid b'morid. That's a person that's rebelling against his Creator. V'asa lekarva ba'adei, it's forbidden to come near such a person. U'la'eschabra imei, and to be friendly with him. V'dohi, and this is a person that's toiref nafshay ba'apai. He snatches away his soul with his anger. Iu torif, he snatches v'okar nafshay, begin rugzei. He uproots his soul because of his anger. V'ashrei b'gavei, and there devolves in him instead elzar, like a foreign idol. V'aldoksiv chidlu lachem, and adam, refrain from a person asher nishabam ba'apai, who loses his soul with his anger. Dahi nishmasa kadisha tarafla, the holy neshama is snatched, v'savla, and is polluted, begin apai, because of his anger. Asher neshama achlef be'apa. He switched his soul because of his anger. Ki bameh nechshavu. Now I told you literally means what's he worth? But ki bameh, he's like a high place. Avodah zara is kashevahu barnosh. He's considered like an idol. Umandis kabri may, if somebody unites with such a person, umandis toibadei, and talks to him, commandis chaber b'avodah zara mamish. It's as if he's uniting with idolatry. My timer. Begin the avodah zara mamish shari begavei. They're devolved in him like an idol. He uprooted the holy neshama from its place. V'sharei ba'asra, and has devolved instead avodah zara elzar. Uma elzar ksivbei. What does it say about the elzar? Al tifnu el alilim. Don't turn to the idols. Kigavnu da, and because of this. Also, that's why it says you're not allowed to look at a person when they get angry. So the Zohar concludes by saying, but what about people that are learning? in the base of Midrash, they look like they're getting very angry. V'itema harugza d'Rabbanan. There's anger of rabbis yelling at each other and learning. Rugza d'Rabbanan tov iu l'kol sitrin. The temporary anger is good on all sides, because that's the rischa daraisa. That's the fire of the Torah. D'Atanina and daraisa esher. It says that Torah is a fire. V'araisa kamaraskale is being cooked up by the Torah. My words are like a fire. And now we learn the Musar, which is also extremely practical. Our rabbis of blessed memory have told us, the world only exists. Now this is interesting. If you would say the world exists because of Torah, it wouldn't be a surprise. The world exists because of prayer, because of charity. The world exists for those strong souls who don't have to have the last word. They know how to close their mouths, zip it in a fight. Shenema toile eretz al blima. The world is suspended al blima. Now, literally, this means the world is suspended al blima. Doesn't seem anything there if you look through a telescope. There's no pedestal that's holding the world. It exists upon nothingness. But we darshan, the world exists on somebody that could zip it in the time of anger. You know, it says it takes two to tango. Tango is a dance. You can't do the dance without two participants. If one of the participants refuses to engage in a fight, there's no fights. Rabbi Avo Aimer, Al Misha Mesim Atzmai Kamisha Eina. The world exists on a person that makes himself as if he's not there. In other words, on a truly humble person. If one is insulted and doesn't answer back, he listens to his shame, and he doesn't retort. I'm referring to such a person. It says, and those that love Hashem, are mighty, like when the sun goes out in its might. It's compared to the sun. When the moon said there can't be two kings on the same throne, the sun was silent. Eliyahu of blessed memory said, you should allow yourself to be insulted and not insult back. And to the members of your family, you should try to exercise restraint more than to anyone else. And Father Eliyahu said, the Torah can only be explained somebody that's not exacting, not particular. And Eliyahu says there's such a thing as Gilu Eliyahu, that Eliyahu revealed himself to people. I don't reveal myself some except to people that are not particular. Ashrei on the makir erkei. Fortune is a person who knows his true worth. He's only a bas b'dam. V'yayim amisa negereinav, and he always realizes that he's going to die. V'yodei ashu lifnei habayri yisbar shmai, and he's standing humble before his Creator. V'zaycher shenaysen le'chaim, and he remembers that Hashem gave him life, la'ovdei, to serve him, v'lasek b'terasei, and to learn his Torah. V'cheinu aisa, and he does that. Vadei of lamala, such a person is beloved above, v'nechbad lamata, and he's desired below. V'Hashem imay, and Hashem is always with him. Finally, we continue the Rambam in Hilchas Kriyashma. If there are feces in a pit, if you could cover the mouth of the pit with your shoe, then you could say Kriyashma as long as it doesn't smell. First of all, as long as your shoe is not touching the feces and it doesn't smell. If you have opposite you a tiny, tiny drop of feces, come on, tipa, like a little drop, you could spit on it, thick spit, Aksha Tiskas, until that drop is covered, Vikari, and then you can say Kriyishma. If there's some grease of excrement on your flesh, or yadav mitanafis mebeis hakisi, or your hands are dirty from the bathroom, but you don't have a smell, because it's not so much, or yuvei or because it's dry, mutter likrais, you're allowed to say kriya shma lefisha and lahem reich ra, because it doesn't have a bad smell, but not if it's by the opening of the rectum. If it's by the rectum, even though if when you're standing it can't be seen, when you're squatting it can be seen. Also likrais, you can't say kriyishma. You have to clean it very well. That's why it's very good to have wipes. It's moist, and it has in its place, it has some kind of a smell. Many gainim say even if your hands have any tzaya, even if it doesn't smell, you can't say kriyishma. He says, although he doesn't hold that way, but the chen roi lasis, it's good to be machmer like them. Reach ra sheyesh lo iker, a bad smell that has already a source. This means that it's not a smell from passing gas. It's coming from something tangible. Marchik arba amas, you have to distance yourself from the smell. The kairei imsaka reach, and then you could say kriyishma with the stopping of the smell. Just 1 second. No. See, I translate that wrong. I had a feeling I was translating that wrong. Reach rash yesh iker, a bad smell that comes from something tangible. Marchik arba amas, you could distance yourself from the source 4 amas, v'kairei, and say kriyishma im psak reich, if the smell had stopped. Vim loy pasak reich, if after 4 amas the smell has not stopped, marchik ad mekayim shepasak reich, you have to distance yourself until you stop having the smell, the kairei. V'she'ein lo iker, if a person passed gas, marchik, you don't have to distance 4 amas, you just have to distance until you don't smell the smell. Marchik ad makom shetichna reich, until you don't smell the smell, v'kairei. Graf shel re'ai, a toilet bowl, v'ovid shel meimei raglaim, or a urinal, also likris kriyishma kenegdon, you can't say kriyishma opposite them, v'afal pi she'ein b'hem klum, even though they're empty, ve'ein lehem reich ra, and they don't have a bad smell, mipnei shu k'beis hakisei, that's like a bathroom, which you're not allowed to daven opposite the bathroom. We want to thank you very much for joining us, and wish you a wonderful evening.